Really quickly, before we get into it, guys, we just finished. We went for an hour and a half. It's a long video, but I really think you guys are going to like it. So be sure to stick to the end because I anticipated our lists would be very similar. And were they similar at all, Slate?
No.
No. We had interesting tier groupings. We had the same number 16, 10, and 1. But aside from that, guys, holy guacamole. There's some crazy stuff in here. We would love it if you could let us know what you thought were the best and worst rankings in the comments and maybe share your top 16 as well. Thank you so much, Slate. Let's get into it.
Fastidious.
Fastidious.
How the heck are you, everybody? I'm Fastidious. Welcome to my channel. A huge friendly welcome to Slate, who is joining me to do a Legendary Lords ranking. Every single Legendary Lord, all 16 of them, ranking them from the bottom to the top, number 16 up to number 1. You can see all my rankings are complete. They're just blacked out right now because the way we're going to do this is we're going to say, all right, number 16, who you got, Slate? Slate will tell me, then I reveal, then we discuss. And guys, if it was not clear by the fact that I'm doing this giant video with Slate of all people, this is the person I asked. This is one of my favorite content creators. If you guys have not subscribed to her yet, you're a fool and you should do it right now. Miss Slate, are you ready?
I am so excited. I have gone full nerd and done like a little data spreadsheet and like scored all the heroes on 4 categories. So how good they are as a hero, how well they enable PvE content, how well they enable PvP content, and then how much varieties can you get out of them in the game. So I'm ready. I'm so excited.
I'm excited to nerd out about this. I didn't take it to that extreme. I obviously think about this stuff a lot whenever I'm doing my tier lists or updating my tier lists on my website. Go check it out, guys. And I think about Lords all the time because I don't have any. But I have not graded them on all the criteria, but certainly we can use those as like kind of lenses of evaluation as we go through. This might be a long video, I don't know, so let's get into it. Slate, who do you have at number 16? The worst. Oh, really quick, sorry. We're not doing unnamables. I actually do think they're probably considered Lord heroes, but they are not of a faction. So if you want to see a video with me and Slate talking about Ymeric and Ajax, you can let us know in the comments. That's not coming today. So of our 16 legendary faction lords, who's the worst, Slate? Who's number 16?
Elder.
We are in agreement.
Yes,
we are in agreement.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. Why do we think Elder is numero 16?
Okay, so firstly, as a hero himself, as a fighter, single target, not actually even a very good single target fighter. I mean, he's okay, but not great. You don't use him in PvP at all. PvE, pretty decent across the board, but the main thing is that if you're running a northern team, you are running like tanky defense, HP, and his Lord skill boosts attack rather than what Haas does with defense. And so if you have the choice between the two, you're going to pick Haas over Elder basically every single time.
That's where I settled. I think Hearts is not a good Lord, as we will find out very soon on this list, I think, for both of us. I don't know where you have him, but I'm assuming it's not in our top 10 or anything like that. And Hearts is way better than Elder. And as someone with an A4 Hearts, I can tell you definitively Hearts is not a good hero. So that kind of covers most of the bases. They have the exact same Lord skill, except like you said, Hearts gives defense, which is tankiness, which is what the faction does. Elder gives attack. Are there opportunities if you want to get cute with a Falcia, right? If you want to run Ardia and Valkyra on like a nice like AoE DPS team in PvP, it can happen. It's vastly outranked, as you said, and not meta for PvP stuff. So it kind of just leaves him as a PvE unit with a very confused kit. He's got incredible base stats in terms of tankiness, but it's all scaling off of attack, where he's fine, but just a normal single target fighter with bad multipliers. Right, so
I think if he had the gluttony like HP,
yes,
he'd be a bit better. But quite honestly, I would pick Isolde over Elder in a lot of PvE content because she brings in on her ult increased block, physical and magic damage reduction, which again, like if you're trying to run tanky teams, is going to be way more helpful in that more like hard content than like bonus attack.
Absolutely. Yeah, you only need the attack. It's super niche. It's like Gear Raid 4 to help your Valkyra, but a well-built Valkyra certainly does not need it. Isolde is enough as a Lord. Dagna is enough as a Lord. And then, yeah, like a not meta AoE PvP arena team, which who really cares? He's not a very good hero himself, which is too bad because he's got to be one of the best looking heroes in the game, right?
And one of the best animations. Oh
yes.
my word. I love his cinematic. Genuinely love his cinematic.
But yeah, that's going to be Elder. It's to me, it's clear cut. I think to you, it was pretty clear cut. Cool hero, not a cool design. I think by far he's the number one legendary lord that deserves a buff. Do you agree on that?
Oh, 100%.
All right. Elder for the two of us. Number 15. Who you got, Slate?
Demi.
That's my wife you're talking about, man.
Demi. Okay, so huge departure for us here. As you're going to see in a moment. I'm not going to say Demi for a little bit. I've got Venoma.
Interesting. Okay. Venoma is my 14.
Okay, so darn close.
We're close. So
I'm quite eager to see how often we depart. This is one I didn't expect. I expect maybe a couple more, but I'm going to tell you guys, I think we're going to be in pretty lockstep. But you got Demi down at 15, which I will say, we kind of talked about this. I had them in buckets. I think you did too, or like tier groupings. Certainly she's at the bottom. I just thought she was towards the better end of the bottom. I can defend her in a second. Tell me why you think she's worse than Morgan and worse than every other lord besides Elder.
Okay, so hero score 4. She is not very good
out of 10?
As a mage herself. She does like good CC and
what was that 4 out of 10?
4 out of 10, yeah.
Mamma mia.
Yeah, well, I mean, she does good. She does a lot of CC. The anti-healing for Gear Dungeon 1 is helpful, but she's terrible in PvE. And then I think the main thing is the fact that her difference with Morrigan on her Lord skill, she has to basically kill things. She doesn't, but you get the damage increase when you kill things up to 36%, whereas Morrigan just is a blanket AoE 25%, which is more consistent. Yeah. And then I think the other main thing is the fact that cultists themselves, the reason she's so low for me, is cultists themselves aren't really meta in any content in this game. They are solid, but they are not always the sort of I'm going to pick this. So even with mages now, you're going to run esotericists more so than necessarily cultists. And that's why I was sort of you don't really use them as much. So they're lower down.
I definitely hear you on all of that. I will say, I think her DPS is slept on a bit. She, as a hero, when she's ulting, if she's built well, it's pretty darn significant. She's not at the level of someone that's good, but in no way is she a Venoma. And she's actually stronger than Morrigan. I think decidedly Morrigan's Lord skill is better, but I don't think it's better enough for me to have that departure where I'll just tell you right now, I ranked Demi above Morrigan. The key thing is, and we can double back to it, we can move on already because I'm going to talk about Demi in a bit, but essentially she's super niche, but for Gear Aid 1, even though she's got this weird range, they always do the heals on the right side when there's the full option against the wall. So you can put her on the right side, so she's as good an anti-healer as someone like an Artemis, right? Combine that with the constant enabling of the slow, her and Artemis neck and neck, the best anti-healers for Gear Aid 1. And then for Gear Aid 4, I guess we can just talk about her now. I've already gone deep enough. For Gear Aid 4, I think she's the single best hero in the game. Full stop. I think she's better than Valkyra. I think she's better than Thalon. I think she's better than Comet, better than Virna. For me, Demi serves 3 roles that any traditional Gear Aid 4 comp will need. You need anti-heal, you need a Lord, and you need some kind of slow enabler or DPS. So it's like 2 main roles and then half of 2 other roles. She frees up 2 spots on your team. Instead of bringing a Morrigan or an Aeon you weren't going to deploy, you bring Demi. She's your anti-healer. She is sufficient. She also can DPS, so the gear requirements are way lower on a Virna or a Greed or whatever else you're using. And then finally, you need a Cultist Lord if you're going to run Cultists. Yeah. So any time I've ever done a takeover, and of the 2 Gear Dungeons, I've done so much more of Gear Aid 4. I kind of, built myself a little world there. If there's Demi, I'm like, oh, this is going to be immensely easier because it's very hard to get the timings and the gear right. Bringing a hero like a Laurel is such a huge advantage for your Valkyra timings or your Thalon timings or any timings that you're struggling with. Usually you don't have a spot. If you have Demi, you have 2 free spots. You know, instead of having to bring Aeon, Artemis, and Greed, or Aeon, Artemis, and Mari, or whatever you might have to do, now you're just bringing Demi. And for me, that's huge. But I totally get it. Outside of those two places, in Gear Raid 1, you don't even need her. Technically, in Gear Raid 4, you don't need her. She is a big L. And PvP, she could not be less useless. And I hear you with that. And you're right about Cultists being a weaker faction. It seems like it's getting a glow up. That glow up might benefit Morgan more than Demi. But where we stand right now, the places you use Cultists are those two niche places. And to me, she's just way better. Morgan will not even be deployed.
Where do you have her on the list?
You gotta wait and see. Speaking of the list, I say let's not even reveal my 14 yet. You said you had Venoma at 14, so we can both discuss Venoma now. We're basically in agreement here, right? Darn close. You want to talk about Venoma and why she's ranked so low, even though she has one of the single most unique Lord skills in the whole game?
I think it's literally because of that. The reason she's not the worst Lord in the game is because she has this incredibly bizarre for a Lord, because it affects everyone. Thing where basically you get this 30% rage upon first deployment of any of the heroes in your team. So you can basically have Venoma at level 1, no promotions, no skills, nothing, and she will work as well
Never
as if
deployed.
you have her fully skilled, deployed, everything. And I think that's the thing. But as a hero herself, I scored her a 2. Like, she's rubbish as a hero.
I think you could argue a 2 is generous. The only thing you could say, she does no DPS, even though they kind of built her kit as a DPS. The only thing, Hex is like another dot. It's essentially poison or burn, whatever you want to think of it as. The new version of poison, not the old one. The only thing she has is curse, which makes Comet a little bit better. And that's it. And that's not a reason to ever deploy her. There's almost no world you would ever deploy Venoma. So you're kind of, her entire quality rides on this very, very, very unique final line of her Lord skill. I will say she's very nice for her faction, the same middle line as Cyrus, because they all have these high ult costs. Cutting it by a quarter is a ton. But Cyrus does that too, and Cyrus is infinitely better in every single way. He'll be a lot later in this video, I would assume. But then this rage is for everyone. The only other heroes I can think of in the whole game that do something with their Lord skill to help non-faction members, I think, are King Hearts and Elder. They give like shields, and then they give smaller shields to non-faction members. I think that's it.
But this is why I have her higher in my list, is because that 25% for Esotericist, like I said, Esotericist is starting to become very strong in pretty much every kind of content. And having, your Boreas ulting faster, having your Anora ulting faster, having, all of these great heroes with a 25% skill cost is why I don't have Venoma lower, because just that in itself, amazing.
I'll actually say I was debating between Venoma at 16 or 15. The tiebreaker for me is, and the reason is, as cool as this Lord skill is, you outgrow it very quickly. This 30, the last line, it's really for progression. It's for progression. It's for once you're late in the game, and certainly end game, you don't need initial rage. You're on top of everything. You're fine. So it becomes entirely useless. So she basically becomes Cyrus if Cyrus had no kit and didn't have a last line of the Lord skill. That's what she is, right? The reason she got the rank higher is the only place this remains relevant is in PvP, in Arena. And aside from top meta, it's still super relevant. So that gave her the bump for me. Any final thoughts on, the goddess Venoma?
She needs a buff.
She needs a buff. Shall we continue? Should I reveal my number 14?
Yeah.
All right, let's see who I got. I got King Hearts here, the patron saint of my account. I think I'll just tell you, is he coming up soon for you or no? I would assume. No? Wow, okay. I've got King Hearts here because his Lord skill is nice, but this defense is, even though I think I probably am the biggest advocate in the realm for defense and building defense on your tanks, it's only relevant very, very, very late in the game. And by that time, you easily can achieve the necessary defense with gear. I see this as nothing. Almost always that 20% boosted defense towards his shielded northern allies is overkill. You're past diminishing returns. So essentially at that point, he's just like a juicy Isolde. There's even content where Isolde is better than him, like the new AMRs, 19 and 21, Isolde with the extra block. That's better than Hearts. He didn't get at the very bottom of my list because I think he still is the single best Lord in the faction, so you will use him. begrudgingly, I still use him in a lot of places just because I run Northerners and he's the best Lord for it. But that's it. He's a bad tank. He's a bad DPS. They envision him as this attack-based DPS tank. He's terrible at DPS and he's mediocre as a tank. He has the worst awakenings in the game. No one knows that better than I do. I've got him this far. The only relevant awakening he has is A4, which is not a King Hearts awakening. It is the universal legendary tank defender awakening. There's just not much meat on the bone here with Hearts besides the fact that he's the best in the faction, and if you have him in certain content, you will use him, but he's not giving you more than that. Any thoughts, or shall we continue?
Funny. As in, like, mine is literally top 10.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think maybe we flipped Demi and Hearts. How about we get your Hearts thoughts when we reach him?
Yeah. Perfect.
All right, Slate, who you got at 13?
Gone.
Wow. Okay, wait, that is, we're not, what, that's, all right, gone. Oh my God. Holy crap. You're going to have to sell me on this. I got Morgan. Wow. How?
Okay, so firstly, as a hero, he's a defender. He sucks. He's he's a 4. He's not a good defender at all. PvE, you very rarely run chaotic comps in PvE successfully. If it is, it's like in your APOC 2 teams, the sort of like more boss fights. And to be honest, if it's Garn versus Valderon, you're picking Valderon. And they're both ancient exclusive lords, so it's not like, well, you're more likely like a Twin Fiend versus Solkadins. Does that make sense? And then PvP, again, he's decent, but you're still going to pick a Valderon over every single time. And it's one of these things, it's like, yes, he does enable chaotic comps, but comparatively, it's night and day with Valderon versus Garn. He's got great animation. And like I said, when I was looking at the data, I was like, basically, he's low on how I was scoring him across these 4 categories. And so I was like, okay, he's down there, because yeah, I mean, if you don't have a chaotic lord, absolutely, you're running a Garn, 100%. But comparatively, when would you ever pick Garn over Valderon?
I can think of definitely some places, but that's not the point. We're very far on this one, so I think I will reserve my Gon thoughts until we reach my ranking, if that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm a very, very big fan of his. Maybe it's because, do you have Valderon?
Yes.
Okay, so as someone with Vladov, maybe I'm just acutely aware of what a Gon could do to a roster.
Yeah.
I also, when we get back to it, I would love to hear more of your thoughts on why you don't think he's a good tank. He's certainly not like Brokey or Osiris, but I rate him fairly high as a tank. But let's circle back. I've got Morgan. Do you have her coming up soon?
I have her top 10.
This is okay. This is getting fun, guys. This is getting spicy. Okay, let me get my Morgan. I'll say this she was my only ancient lord, I don't have any ancient lords. She was my only legendary lord for a long, long time. Morgan's DPS is very mediocre. She's outclassed left, right, and center. I need to make the video where I test her head to head with Abizu. I think in certain content, there's a good chance Abizu out DPSs her. I'll have to actually do the testing though. She does have the best lord skill in the faction. That being said, in a lot of stuff where you can control for it, Demi at least can compete, if not exceed. Though I agree, in general, Morgan's better. I really don't like her kit. There's nothing in her kit besides damage, and the damage isn't really good. On top of that, she has very weak damage against non-ground units. To be fair, a lot of times you're using Cultists, you're using Morgan. There are ground units, but it's not like she's that good against ground units. Basically, she's like, DPS-wise, like a little bit better than Zealous, which is a pretty rough demerit against you, I would say. And then the final thing I would say for Morgan is Cultists are a very forgotten faction. Seems like they're trying to give them some love, but as it stands right now, she's the best lord as a lord in a faction that's not that good, and her as a hero is borderline non-deployable. And certainly in the end game, I would say you outside of GVG, which is I'm assuming where you're headed, she can be really meta endgame GVG. To me, that is not enough to take away from the fact that I think she sucks.
That's fair, yeah. But then that's the sort of thing of like, what content do you prioritize and value the lords in it, if that makes sense.
And I hear you.
So,
and I think as someone who doesn't have lords, I acutely see how having them is huge for GVG. But Morgan is one that I have, and I'm still not running that comp because, yeah, it takes a lot more than just her. And personally, I just think, to me, I know not everyone feels this way. I'm sure you don't. To me, GVG is just another game mode. I'm not going to give people a big boost for that. And the fact that she is very good right now in that, but still not even the top defining meta, I can't bump her any higher than I kind of already did, putting her at 13. Number 12, Slate.
So
Who do you
I
got?
will say this. This is my first tie on the scoreboard.
Okay.
So 11, 12 tied for me in scores.
You got to pick one. You got to pick one.
Oh, no, I will. Like, so
okay,
the list comes down to, like,
okay.
personal.
Okay.
But they tied. So at 12, I have Leia.
Okay. I've got her far higher as well.
Yeah.
But Leia, she's unique for sure. I'll show you who I have right now. I've got Demi. So it's not like I had Demi way higher. I told you this was my bottom tier, these 5. That's basically how I broke it up. Then I kind of have a single tier unit, and then I've got everybody else broken up as well. But yeah, I guess to quickly just get my Demi stuff out of the way, I already covered it. I just think even though she's niche, the fact that she's the best in the game, in my opinion, at something, gave her a big bump. Leia, why do you have Leia so low?
Basically, Leia is very good as a rage unit herself, but she doesn't need to be a lord in order to do that bonus. So, for example, Venoma's lord skill, that thing that she does, only happens if she's lord, I think.
Yes.
Oh,
no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, suddenly was like, oh my goodness, have I got this
No,
wrong?
you're good.
But the Leia, using her, she doesn't have to be Lord in order to get this like huge boost to your team. So if you look at what she does in terms of enabling Watcher factions, right? It's effectively when they're healed, they gain plus 25% damage, which is really nice so that we're starting to get good Watchers coming through. I definitely think Watchers is like, they seem to be focusing on Watchers at the moment. We've had Lucius come in, we've had Ingrid, we've had Kigiri. Like, they are starting to buff Watchguard. So that's really nice. So yeah, so I scored her a 5 as a hero. PvE, I've got her an 8 because she enables a lot in PvE. PvP, 3, you just don't really use her. And I think this is the thing, the reason she is where she is because I don't believe she needs to be a lord to get the most use out of her. So if you're tiering lords, that's why she's so low for me.
I think that's a very interesting point. I also want to take this time to say, I could have asked, you were the first and only person I asked to do this collab with, and in part because I know you're so focused on PvE and especially GVG, which many people might describe as like holes in my game. I keep an eye open to it, but it's certainly not my priority or my passion. What you're describing there as a demerit that she doesn't need to be a lord, to me is a huge bonus, and that's why you'll see I have her ranked several spots higher. I think she's excellent as a lord, and you can still find an amazing place for her even if you want to run another lord. So you could run 2 lords and still run a Leia, and you're still getting use out of your Leia. The way I approach this list, and perhaps I could have been clearer, but maybe I shouldn't have because now we've gotten some interesting things going on, is who are the heroes that like are going to help your account the most when you pull them, kind of thing.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so clearly, but then this is the cool thing. This is why I love these kinds of discussions, because honestly, I think at the end of the day, pulling a legendary lord is going to be massive for your account. No matter, like, even if you get like the worst one in the game, it's still gonna like boost stuff. And so actually, in a weird way, you're kind of like splitting hairs with a lot of these heroes, particularly as we like move up the buckets.
For sure, yeah.
In the fact that it's like, Leia's amazing. I'm not going to sit here and be like, she's a terrible hero. She is phenomenal at what she does. It's just, like I said, the only way I could do this was to datafy it, basically.
That's fair. Who do you have at number 11, Slate? This is your tie.
Twin Fiend.
Okay. We're gonna have the most. I never anticipated we'd have such different lists, but I think it will make for a much more fun discussion. But we got a tie right here. Finally. It's funny. Yeah, it's funny that we came all around, but yeah, Twin Fiend. I think we're officially. I would say we're into good heroes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would only literally say Elder, Demi, and Venoma were my bottom bucket.
Yeah, I would say this it was like these 5. So to me, this is the start. And from like having any Legendary Lord is fun. Don't get me wrong, but Twin Fiend was the first. Is the lowest of the heroes that, you know, unless you already had Soul Cadens, you should be pretty amped up to pull.
I love Twin Fiend. So basically, I think the thing is, I scored him a 6 overall as a hero. He's a single target, high damage burst mage. He PvE 9 because Guild Boss 1. One of the most important things in this game is getting to that 50k Nightmare 4. Like the rewards and everything else like that is just huge when you talk about like account change and account progression, is progressing in Guild Boss 1. And so he just phenomenally changes, obviously A1, like versus Pyros. Like there's that whole thing there. But PvP, you don't use him. And I think the thing is that he boosts Infernal members, whereas Sulkadens gets boosts from faction members. Like, so that's the little difference between the two. And I think, I just, the top guild boss things are Zillitu, Hex, Twin Feet. You can get crazy scores with an Infernal team. And so, but it's just effectively boss content is where he shines.
I agree. I think you hit almost everything, so I don't have to take too long here. Single target PvP, he can be good. Not meta, but can definitely be good to help you. So if you guys have a Zealot especially, you should try that out if you need to. However, key thing I just said, if you have Zealot, Twin Fiend is still viable without Zealot. I think he kind of gets a bad rap that he needs her. However, to be truly relevant, he literally does need her. Zealot is broken. She's been broken forever. She gets like double counted from Focus Fire through Twin Fiend. That's something you can exploit or take advantage or whatever you want to call it with Twin Fiend and Pyrus. You cannot do it with Soul Cadens, so that's why you see it as like Soul Cadens draws from Zealot and the others, whereas Twin Fiend like pushes Zealot. However, if you can get Twin Fiend going, like you said, and he's A1 and you have Zealot, that's what I have and have had forever. Shockingly, I actually have A2 Twin Fiend, which I eventually will be A1 when I reset him one day if I get Soul Cadence. But I did put a Soul Stone into him because the A1 is that important. When you do have it all cooking, he's pretty tremendous, I would say. Incredible for Guild Boss 1, very viable for Guild Boss 2, strictly inferior to Soul Cadence, but very viable. And then very, very good in Arbiter of Frost, strictly inferior to Soul Cadence. And that's why I had him as like a near tie with the person I have at number 9 you're about to see. And the demerits against him, where you need these little special things, to make him Twin Fiend. To really take advantage, you need Zeal 2 and you need 2 copies, or you need him in a Soul Stone. Whereas who I have at number 9, you'll see you don't. The other demerit against him is I truly think he's the only Legendary Lord full stop that is strictly worse than his counterpart in every single way. Assuming you're comparing a Soul Cadens A1 to a Twin Fiend A1, there's no content I wouldn't choose Soul Cadens. I can't think of one piece of content where I think I could literally think of something for every other example, including Leia versus Ingrid. I cannot think of one for Twin Fiend versus Soul Cadens. So that's where I left it.
I think that's fair actually. And I think basically my number 10 is Soul Cadens.
Wowzer. All right. Let me quickly reveal mine and then we can get to that. I have got Aracha, whatever you want to call it. I'll say my Aracha spiel very quickly. I see her strictly as an enabler of piercers, which she is phenomenal at. And unlike Twin Fiend, you don't need to do anything except put her in the Lord spot and enjoy. However, I do consider her a pretty darn bad hero. We'll get back to Aracha in a second whenever we get to your rating for her. I'd love to hear why you have Soul Cadence so low.
So I scored him an 8 as a hero, 9 for PvE enabling, 1 for PvP. And then, like I said, he's a good burst single target mage, good in, like you said, this boss content. And so, I think the thing is like, as we move up this list, if you have these niche heroes in PvE, like I said, that I didn't separate by boss, this is where they are like significantly lower. Because I think if I had the 3, then these would get pushed up, if that makes sense. But because you just don't use them at all, really, in PvP, it sort of lowers their score, effectively.
That's fair enough. I think for me, I'll just say my Soul Cadence thing now. We'll get to him in a little bit on my ranking, but essentially, he's strictly so dominant in Guild Boss 1 and Guild Boss 2, like utterly meta and dominant. I rate him super high because I do think that's the most important stuff in the game. And then there are other things where he just is the best option in the game, right? Like Arbiter of Frost, it's Soul Cadence. PvP, he's not great. I think to say he's bad, to give him a 1 is crazy. Like single target arena, if you have him and you don't have meta stuff and you're progressing,
single target arena,
But he's the single target king, right?
Yeah, but you're not going to use him in the other 2 modes of arena or in GVG.
Which is fair. I'll push back a little on GVG. If you're like not good, if you're not deep into GVG, you will see him all the time. Is he a great choice? Probably not, but it's not like he gets no play like a Demi or something, you know? Like he exists.
I would still use Demi over, because the rest of the Infernals, you can make some good things with like greed and whatnot. So yeah, I can
defer to you on this. I'd say anecdotally, because I'm also in like my Epics guild too, which is not very good. I see a lot of him. I beat him, but I see him. He's certainly, I'm not saying he's good at PvP, but I don't think he's irrelevant. He's just not very good, and he's certainly not meta. I think he's so good in PvP that you'll see I have him ranked a nice chunk higher. Who do you have at number... Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. The only other thing I was going to say is he's quite like a selfish hero, if that makes sense. But like you said, it boosts him versus Twin Fiend. So that's why I had them basically together.
I would push back on that only. I don't care who's getting the DPS as long as my DPS is higher.
Okay,
so that's just kind of where I settle. And it's like, your Zeal 2 will do way worse with Soul Cadence. But typically, if you add up Soul Cadence plus Zeal 2 and Twin Fiend plus Zeal 2, if it's all built right, same gear, you should see the higher number with Soul Cadence. Who do you have at number 9, Slate?
I have Morrigan at number 9.
Morrigan. Okay, great. So was I correct? Is this mostly you really like her for GVG right now, or?
I think so. Basically, she got flat 7s across the board. She's just she's just solid. Like I said, that AOE damage, your Vienna, your and like the AOE mages getting that just like solid 25% is a really nice sort of reliable Lord skill. And then I think the thing is that she's the sort of like, I would say she's arguably the only between her and Demi that is viable in GVG. It's still niche. Cultist teams in GVG are still very niche. You're sort of looking at an A5 Kriya really at the very top end type things, but Anora, Reeve, that kind of stuff. And I would say she's like decent AoE mage. I don't think she's like you said, zealous. It's decent, particularly progression, different things like that. So I still think she's quite usable across the board. I just don't think she's shiny, if that makes sense.
Usable, but I'd say you hit a pretty significant wall. Like I got Morrigan on day 48 of my account or something before I'd cleared all of Gear Aid 1, and her being a Legendary Lord helped, but her as a DPS unit, she didn't even make her way into my final 121, even on strictly free to play at that point, right? No content creator diamonds or anything. She couldn't work her way in, and I put plenty of skill ups into her. Quick little thing I want to say about Morrigan that I meant to say before. She requires way less skill ups, which is fun.
Yeah.
Like she's 12 skill ups instead of 16, which I just think is fun. It's really easy to max her out. It's nice for like beginner BP stuff as well. All in all, I would rate her. I'd rate her as like a 5 as a hero. So maybe that's the difference. Maybe that's the difference between these ratings here. Overall, I don't like her.
And I think that's the thing that's interesting as well, is like, obviously, neither of us have all the lords to play with all the lords. So, like you said, you spoke to some people, I spoke to some people to just be like, hey, you've played with this hero. How do you actually find their DPS or their tanking and stuff? And so I think it's very different when you have a hero that you know really well. For sure. What the capabilities are. So you saying that Morrigan is like a 5? I would trust that, because you got her so early on, you got to play with her all the way through. I got
her when she should have helped me, and she like couldn't help me, is how I would put it.
So
cool thing about Morrigan, if we want to give her some love, Morrigan, I use her as my Lord and Conquer. I know a lot of people do that. You can't even deploy her. It's melee units only, but her Lord skill really is that good for content like that, which is really cool. I just revealed my number 9. before we get into that, I want to say, I think hopefully that's why people appreciate us doing this together. I would say when it comes to PvE, I don't have that many holes because I've done hundreds and hundreds of takeovers. So I've been on accounts far more lucky and lucrative and amazing than mine. So I've really got to try them all out. But I will continue to defer to you, especially on GVG. No idea at all. Leia, we can be pretty quick here. I already said I think it's a huge plus that she is one of the single best lords in the game when not a lord. She's incredible just as a hero. She is so powerful in particularly the guild bosses. I really love her. Guild Boss 1, the classic Leia meta, was the original defining meta, Leia and Laurel. That's like what it was. Yeah. All those top teams would run 11 units because they'd run a full squad plus adding a Laurel, as an assist unit. And it's pretty wacky. I know we found other things now, but it's still completely and utterly viable. For Guild Boss 2, she's on my team, incredibly dominant. More importantly, she's on Phoebu's team, which is the #1 team in the world, 433,000 mech fragments. He uses Leia over an Ingrid or something. He has everything. He chooses Leia. I think she's that good as a lord, and I actually love her lord skill. For certain content, non-boss content, it is better than Ingrid, her as a watcher lord, because it's just all the damage all the time, 25% boost when they're healed. If you're running any normal content, that's like a permanent boost to everybody, essentially. Unless it's these giant crazy waves. Whereas if we look at Ingrid over here, we get the extra damage directly to, that's like pinging in directly when they're focused on one target, which can be stack up and be crazy. But in general, for a lot of stuff, Leia is really darn cool. The final thing, they've invested, as you said, all this energy into Watchers because they were so clearly the worst faction for so long. I think we've reached the point where they made the investment and it paid off. Like agreed. I run a team with Leia, Constance, Kagiri, and Lucius. Lucius now, because of Kagiri, gets to be a DPS. I have the video coming out by the end of the weekend. It's insane. And it's like very much on the back of how wacky Leia is. And then finally, this 10% rage doesn't seem like so much. Maybe, I mean, to you, I'm sure it does. But to some people, it might not read like, well, that's not Hollow and Eloin doing all the things all the time. It's insane because you can time it out. You get it where you want. It cuts everyone's rage costs, kind of like the way Venoma does, 25%, or Cyrus does. It's just effectively cutting everybody by 10% if you build her well and cycle her well. Any headache for something like an APOC 2 run on an Eloin, or back in the day on a Lucius before they changed how the whole thing works, it's all gone, right? She just makes it so smooth and easy. I'm a huge Leia stan. She's by far my favorite legendary lord that I have. Granted, I only have 4, and we've covered all of them because none of them are very good. But to me, she's decidedly the best. I really like her. Shall we move to number 8?
Arguments about Leia, like in terms, it's like, yeah, she's great, basically. Yeah.
Shall we continue our march to the heroes here that there's not going to be much discussion?
Next tie, 8 and 7 are tied. So
Great.
At 8, I have Hars.
Okay, King Hars. Crazy. Yeah. I have someone we've already talked about. This was a big, I almost went higher. Why can't I do it? There we go. This is where I have gone.
Okay, fair.
So we've discussed both these heroes already. Do you want to just, I guess, speak to, we've kind of criticized them separately. Do you want to speak to Hearts' virtues and I'll speak to Gon's?
Yeah, so I think the main thing is that I really value the Northerners as a faction. I pretty much use them in nearly every content apart from like boss content, as in like the APOC late game guild boss. But I started an account and I've got them early and they're doing quite well with like Glacius as a single target, so it's not like they can't be used. And I think the thing is that I feel like Hars is one of those heroes that just is boring in the fact that he is a solid tank. He's not the best tank because he doesn't have a revive on him, but he's solid. The boost that he does, he also has this like freeze CC, which is nasty in some PvE content, but definitely in GBG. Yeah. And then basically Northerners are strong in GBG. They have been the whole way through. And you're going to run a Hars. It boosts the entire rest of your team. And he's just, yeah, that's why he is where he is for me. Basically.
To criticize him one more time, because I can do that. I'm putting him on my body. I just want to take you guys through why he frustrates me so much. He's got one of the most boring Lord skills, which is still viable because it's such an important faction. I completely agree with you on that. However, Gon is a better tank. Regulus is a better tank. Reeve is a better tank. Crowder is a better tank. Trusk is a better tank. Cyrus is a better tank. Brokir is a better tank. Constance is a way better hero, but we won't talk about tank.
Not a tank,
Baron's
yeah.
a better tank. Livian's a better tank. Olog's a better tank. Arguments, depending on content, Isolde is a better tank. That is just such a huge issue for me that this like lordly god tank is that mediocre. His base stats are a joke, and it's because they clearly wanted him to be a DPS, and his DPS is so bad. His saving grace, I will say, for specifically guild versus guild, the freeze is such a headache, and he's crazy.
Yeah.
I still have to run him on my GVG defense because I have the worst defenses in my guild. You know, you can use him really, really well if you've got amazing stuff. But I just wanted to
very what I'd call expensive in terms of like exactly like you said about the fact he's not a very good tank. You need to have very good gear to make him equal an Olag. But I would say that, you know, for example, when you get to the late and end game and you start to get that good Guardian gear, if you have Brock, you're going to just run Brock and Haas all through Void Rift, all through any content that you need effectively double tank in.
Yeah.
And it, like you were saying about this, a Demi freeing up slots, that's what I like about Haas.
For sure.
Is I can just bring him and Brock and I'm done.
To support, when you're saying Brock, you mean Brock here, right?
No, sorry, yes,
okay,
yeah. Sorry.
Okay. No, but I'm proof of that. That's what I do. I haven't touched Olag in months, and it's because you do reach a breaking point where you have enough good gear, Guardian gear, Immortal Warrior. We have better sets coming too, and then he can outscale these epics. That is totally true, and he really reaches this good enough, which is fine. But I don't think there's much meat on the bone with that hero personally. I'll talk about why I like Gon so much. I find for any traditional PvP, he's exceptionally strong. He's good enough as a tank for anything. He does the same kind of thing you're describing. I really, really, really like this passive here, where he takes 10 damage, not 10,000 damage or 10%. It's just 10 ticks. It's nothing. He's got very, very, very significant base stats, you know, just below like a Brokir, for example, or a Regulus. And as a Lord, if you do have the chaotic units, I think he's an almost all content better than Valderon. He's not, because Valderon is also gets to be Valderon. But as a Lord, just the Lord skill, this is stronger. The 20% attack and defense bonus when HP is low is just strictly stronger than what Valderon does, which is the most selfish Lord skill in the game.
Yeah.
We'll get to Valderon in a second. Of course, Valderon has not been mentioned by either of us yet because he's freaking Valderon. He's my most wanted or second most wanted hero, full stop, for a reason. But Valderon is just because of the one-man wrecking crew he is. If it comes to just supporting the team, Gon is better. And specifically in content like Conqueror, Gon is better than Valderon, right? There aren't many places you could say that, but Gon is strictly entirely meta for not guild versus guild, but arena if you don't have Valderon, which may feel like a big if, but for 98% of players, it's usually a one or the other as it is. And I think he's so much better than Vladov, you can't even put it into words. And that's why I really do rate him so high. The upgrade from this on a hero that is useless outside of early game progression to having this go to 60% damage, and then you get the post-deployment defense and attack boost as well, is so monumental that it gets such a big step up compared to like an Isolde to a Hearts or an Elder, or even like a Raiden to a Venoma. Let's move on. I think it's about to get insanely juiced up. I really think that top 4, but I think already this top 7, you guys can see, have we, save for Soul Kittens, I think we've hit all the same bases so far. Let's see how we continue. Who do you have?
Araka. You use Pierces in basically so much content. And what she does, I mean, the person who gets the most benefit from her Lord skill, which is this increased damage tile away, is going to be Idril, who basically for late game GR3 is a must. And so when she gets that boost with Araka, I find that is a difference between being able to clear a gear raid 3, 21, 20, that kind of thing, versus just the extended rage that you would get from a Lunaria, for example. I think the other thing that makes her really high is that being a ground unit, she can actually be preferable in some comps versus an Ivar. So like with APOC 2, if you're super platform heavy with everything, you might decide you're going to bring a Raka in over Ivar because you need that extra ground unit, especially like Gear Dungeon 2. when you need an extra ground unit, it's like she can fulfill that role. I don't think she's a very good fighter, but I do think she's very good CC. And then again, in GVG, that CC, not so much this map, but the CC that she is able to put out is very strong. So yeah, and I got her very early on in my account, and I used her so versatilely across so much content that I was like, I have a little bit of a soft spot for her, basically.
Totally. I would say what you just said at the end might be why I'm a little lower on Araka than a lot of people. I still don't have her to this day, so I'm acutely aware of what you can, and I don't have Yovar, obviously. I'm acutely aware of what you can accomplish with just Eliza or Lunaria, you know? And then, yes, I've had a whole video on how Aracha and Idril with mediocre gear is enough to beat 321. That being said, because I've beaten 321 so many times on so many accounts, I know how many other ways you can do it still. So the way I view Araka, especially because if it's not clear, I think Slate, you and I both are viewing this with Endgame as the ultimate lens, you know, because we want to give a holistic rating here, something very comprehensive. I just really see her as the damage boost, which is inferior to Yovar, obviously. And I think in a lot of content, not the difference. Is it super helpful? Sure. But when you're deep, you know, the extra whatever damage, it's great, but I think she's a bad hero. I really do. Outside of GVG, I think she's essentially useless. You can use her as your floor tank unit for Gear Aid 3. You could also use Volca. You could also use Arrogance. You could also use Absent. You could also use Olog. You could also use no one. It doesn't really matter. It depends how you're going to run it, right? So as a unit, I see her borderline useless. I hear what you're saying about APOC 2, but I think that's a unique situation to be in. Though I do lend it credence, I also think it's slightly dismissive of a lot of people would much rather sit someone else than a Yovar because he's Yovar and he's so good. But yeah, I just see it as like a damage boost, which again is contingent upon tiles, which usually comes out to about a 15 to 20% damage boost, which is really nice, but I just don't see it as the big difference. For most people, it's not like, I think it's a very unique and solvable problem that like, oh, I can't get 50k guild boss blood with Lunaria. I could do it with Aracha, because you could also just farm more artifacts or farm better gear for a week. She's not useless. I still rated her, to be clear, in my top 10. I was gonna say, I feel like Yovar showed us what a real Piercer Lord could be and just dominate every aspect of the game, whereas Aracha's just nice. I will give her one big plus over Yovar. You don't need to deploy her, which can be really comfy for stuff like Guild Boss 1, for example, where like Yovar might be a great candidate to be a cycle unit because his damage is so bursty, but then when you take him off, you're losing the damage boost from his Lord skill. So there's a lot of things where it is nice to just plug and play Aracha and forget about it. Again, that's also a plus I gave her over Twin Fiend. But all in all, I think people are so high on her because of the Lord skill, and I think she's, in 98% of content, a truly terrible hero.
See, I think the thing is that, like you had the argument for Demi having multiple roles in a team being why you rated her, you know, obviously not high, but higher. I view Araka as one of the best units, like an Abomination, to tank when you don't necessarily need a tank. And that then frees up a slot and is a Lord and does CC. And so I actually think she's very, very versatile in the late game and end game. Yes, you're not going to be using her a tank progression-wise, but progression-wise, you can use her as a decent fighter. Particularly behind a tank, she's got enough of a hit. Obviously, not as good as a Valkyrie or different things like that. But I actually think if you take away the fact that she's a fighter as a support unit, effectively, or a sort of flexible tank,
you're kind of just calling her a meat sack, though, right? Like if you have good enough gear, if you put good enough gear on a meat sack, it can still work. I mean, what you're saying is 1000% valid, but like look at these stats. The defense is quite high for a defender, for a fighter, excuse me, but not insanely high, but it's certainly on the higher end. The HP is terrible. Sub 18k is pretty awful for a legendary fighter. Let's see where her magic res is. Slightly high for a fighter, but pretty bad in general. I hear what you're saying, and for sure when you've got the gear to make it work, it works. I really push back on her being a good fighter. The poison is contingent upon the explosion of the spider toxin, which works in Gear Aid 3, but the damage is negligible anyway.
You're not using her for damage. I think if you're using her for damage, you're using her wrong, basically.
So when you're saying her as a fighter, you just mean like throw a lunacy visor on her and
Yeah, lunacy visor, and put her in like full guardian gear. You can even put her in invig gear if you want to use her in Guild Boss 1. You can
That's
just
what
basically
I did.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, tank Araka is the way you would use her. The only time I would ever use her as a like DPS is up to like mid game when you like, let's say you get her like me, I got her super early and it was like, okay, I can sort of use this as a fighter, but very quickly dropped off because her DPS is rubbish. But as a tank, she's very good when you don't need a tank.
Yeah,
but you
just need a warm body.
Yeah, but they can actually like, take a few hits and do some CC.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, fair enough. The CC's underrated. She's got a very good Lord skill. She's fairly high on both of our lists, I would say. Shall we see my number 7? We're at the point where I think I remember who it is. It could be my 6 and 7. I'm trying to remember. Okay, yes, this is my Soul Cadence. We already covered it. I think he's such a supreme boss killer. I think he's such an obvious investment for A1 that very few accounts wouldn't have him A1 fairly quickly. Because unless you got really lucky and you pulled an early Ingrid or Praetus or something, he's a top tier A1 candidate. It is that good. He is that strong. He can put out hits of 12 million damage. Like he's truly and utterly ridiculous. All right, number 6.
So 6 and 5 are again tied. So for me, at number 6 is Ivar.
Nice. Okay, another split for us. I have him a little chunk higher, but we're at the point where you can't get that much higher. I've got Cyrus. Don't put your hands over your mouth. You don't have him more than 3 spots higher than me. You don't have him higher than 4, do you? No. Oh my God! What?
This is so funny.
Okay.
This is amazing.
I'll go
That
my
is
Cyrus
actually
while you catch your breath. Cyrus, completely and utterly brilliant in GVG. Obviously, he is the best tank in the game. I think he just in terms of his kit at being a tank. He's got a very good Lord skill for a very good faction. I don't really have much negative to say about him. I'm that high on these next 5 units, quite frankly.
Okay, yeah.
So we can talk about Yovar. You can get away with a lot in this game without Cyrus, whereas some of these other units are just completely and utterly, entirely game changing. That's kind of the cusp. But I'll just tell you, 6 and 5, that's kind of was neck and neck, ridiculously strong for me, as you're going to see. Yeah. Then I had a very obvious 4, and then I hope we all know who the top 3 are. But it sounds like you have a different top 3 than me, which is going to blow my mind.
It's going to be so interesting.
Yeah. Really quickly to wrap up, I have nothing bad to say about Cyrus. We're just that much high on our list. All these crazy lords, and basically the other ones I think just bring that much more and are that much more meta, essentially. And obviously I value GVG a little less, so I just see him as a brilliant tank and a great lord for a great faction.
I'm very looking forward to like defending my defender.
Sure. Let's talk about Yovar.
Yeah. So I've got Ivar here. He's a fantastic burst damage marksman as a unit himself. And then like we sort of when we were talking about Araka, being a Piercer Lord is super strong. I think the thing is that the like exactly like you said, he has to be deployed to get the bonus that he does for his Lord skill. The next lot, it really comes down to almost basically how versatile and how much they enable, if that makes sense. And I think, I think Ivar is very, very strong as a unit himself. I think he's very, very good in PvE. I have him as a 10 in what he enables in PvE. And then, PvP, I've got him as an 8. So he's pretty strong as well. But,
I think it just speaks to where we are on the list. It's kind of nitpicking here. I'll say my Yovar piece now, just so we don't have to double back on it. I agree with everything you said. I think he's a top 3 unit in the entire game for PvP. We haven't talked that much about Immortal Codex, but he is a 100% meta necessary unit for 2 different codexes, right? For Furious Torrent and for Styx, he's on every single top team. I think that's really important, especially for people that want to be competitive later on. He is not only, and this is where I think it's a good thing that, sure, you have to deploy him, but he's such a crazy good hero. He is like instrumental to 50k Guild Boss 1 and 120k APOC 2 for people that want it and run him. He really is. I think he's pretty darn annoying in Arena, and I think he's even more annoying in GVG. I know he's not absolutely top meta, but I think he's off meta, super strong GVG. I have him, I'll just tell you, I've got him 2 spots higher. I am very, very high on Yovar. I'm also fairly biased because he's like my favorite hero in the entire game. I think he's so cool. But I think
really cool.
I think the only thing Aracha has on him is she's a floor unit, which in certain things can be cool. And then also you don't have to deploy her. But I think 95% plus of the time, any normal account, you're dying to deploy Yovar. So that condition is not even a penalty. And he's better than, he's like a top 5 hero full stop in the game for me, I think. Top 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Probably
he's a very strong hero himself. Yeah. Very, very strong.
Yeah.
And I think this thing, these next ones, it really is going to be splitting hairs. Because I would say 6 to 1 are just phenomenal units and phenomenal lords. So this was hard.
This was the pretty clear split for us. Like I did this on a big group call on my Discord, the Fastidious. Go check it out. You can be a part of it. So shout out to everybody that helped out. We had this for a pretty clear thing, these top 8, and then pretty clear 6 and 5, and then we knew who 4 was, and then top 3. So those were kind of my buckets. I am going to have my sphincter fall out if we do not have the same 5. I'm going to lose my mind.
Valderon.
All right, consider my mind lost. That is unbelievable to me. Unbelievable. But I love it. All right, I've got Torador.
Okay, so this is going to be interesting, basically.
How... Yeah, I can't speak. You got to do Valderon first.
Okay.
How would you not have Valderon higher?
Because so I think this is the thing. It comes down to, I tend to think when we think about lords and different things like that, we almost get almost sidetracked in a way by how good the unit is themselves, and it's like, oh my god, this is an incredible unit. One of the things that I think is really important is looking at what they do to the comps that you can run, if that makes sense, with the heroes within their faction and how important that is. So there are lords higher than Valderon for what they do to their factions, if that makes sense. So
it makes perfect sense. I'm trying to decide if I want to say my thing now or when we get to my Valderon ranking. I think I want to wait. But I think that's a very good point. My counter would be, he's so strong.
Yes, he himself easily one of the best heroes. Like he's absolutely phenomenal. And definitely when you're talking about chaotic comps, he, like we said, his lord skill is incredibly selfish in terms of it's basically all about boosting his damage. But if you're running a chaotic comp, because he is a fighter, it means you can bring in a proper tank like a Brokir, which rather than a gun, so you again free up that slot, huge amount of damage, pair him with a Sargak and a Carnelian, even like Cade or even all of these bad here like Durza, it's still going to be better. And I think the thing is, as a standalone unit himself, easily one of the top units in the game, no questions about that. I just think where you use chaotic units in terms of variety across the board, and I think again this comes down to how much you rate boss content versus different things, is that I think chaotic as a faction is less versatile across all content than some of the other ones, basically.
I'll give you a teaser for my response when we get there. You don't need a faction. He's just by himself. It doesn't matter. He frees up an entire need for faction, in my opinion. I don't even think of him as a chaotic lord. Just because you can. He's literally a one-man faction. That's how I kind of view it. But we'll circle back.
But then this is the thing. I guess what I was saying about Leia. The reason I had her lower is that she works not as a lord. So for me,
it kind of comes down to the approach of the list, right?
Yeah.
You must have Torador 4, right? Holy crap. Okay, well then I'll talk about Torador now. We're in the nitty gritty. For people who don't know, in the past, I had Torador ranked, I believe, 8. So he's gotten a huge bump. Nothing's changed. It's just they have double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, sextuple, septuple down on nightmares. They're like, this game is the game about nightmare fighters, and that's all that matters. I think Toreador has the single most synergistic Lord skill in the whole game with his faction and what his faction's all about. His faction's all about these fighters getting out a lot of hits. He makes them faster, and then also he allows them 30% of the time to land extra hits. Nightmare fighters in general happen to have, I hope I picked a good one here, very nice rage regen based off of their basic attack, usually a minimum of 10. So that's 10 rage they build per hit. So 30% of the time is an extra 10 plus rage because of Toreador. Combine that with the fact that they all have mechanics where a lot of them have mechanics where cool things happen off of their basic attacks. They have crazy high base attack, to begin with, their actual attack number. So they deal tons of damage. He just allows so much more damage to exist. And I actually think he might be the most tremendous upgrade in the game over an epic. Wrath is 100%. The progression king, right? But this is like cute, the increased speed. This is lunacy. And the final thing I'll say that's really locked it in, I always liked Toreador since I started playing the game, and people were pretty sour on him because he's just kind of a weird, clunky, bad tank. I froze for a second. Bad tank. But the game is, they do what a lot of games do. They are not inspired, and they're like, how can we make this harder? What if they had more defense? What if they had more magic res? Every single Nightmare unit, unless they're putting out burn, is putting out physical damage. He's giving a huge defense shred, defense break, minus 20%. It's permanent. It's every single attack, which has just made him the god of boss content. I obviously care a lot about boss content. They keep pumping out new Nightmare fighters. They can't help themselves. It's Kagiri. We're about to get Twyla next week. I couldn't leave Toreador out of the top 5. To me, the top 4 are a whole nother tier, but Toreador is that good. I was trying to get him to this 8th spot and getting these ancient exclusives ahead of him, and I couldn't do it.
Pretty much for all the reasons that you said is why he is at the spot I have put him in, and obviously I've got more as well. So I will say 4 and 3 are tied for me, so it comes down to personal, and I know that this is going to be so controversial, so I am just going to say it. Number 4 is Ingrid.
Yeah, that is, wow. Okay. That's the crazy. That's the craziest. Yeah. I had such a hard time deciding if I was going to put her at number 1 or not. That's insane to me. Yeah. Well, you got to just. I'll say all the good stuff about Ingrid. I mean, everyone knows all the good. How is she? How do you think there are 3 heroes in the game better than Ingrid?
Okay,
tell us.
So as a unit herself, she is god tier. She is possibly one of the most ridiculous heroes we've ever seen. In terms of, she is literally in a league of her own as a hero. The AoE capabilities that she had are insane, and then the single target that she does as well is absolutely insane. So there is no, this is not me saying about her as a unit itself. She is phenomenal. What it comes down to is, like I said, what she enables. And for most PvE content that is not boss content, she, with her weird range, is kind of hard to use, and you're not going to really use watchers in really many of the gear raids or even AMR. I mean, the late AMR, the new stages, it's possible, but it's that kind of thing. And I think the thing is yes, for the boss fights, but like you said, Leia is almost more useful in certain things over Ingrid. And so, yes, she herself is amazing. As the watch guards improve, maybe it gets sort of better. But the thing is that the way her Lord skill is that it has to be to the same enemy. And that means it's really only boosting 2 bosses rather than just general, stuff like that. And I actually think she's stronger in an Arbiter comp than she is in a Watcher comp. And so as a Watcher Lord, I don't think, compared to what the next 3 that I have do to their factions, that's why I have her at 4.
Fair enough. I think it's slightly semantic because, to me, we're evaluating of this group of heroes that are lords, who are the best. That's how I'm evaluating it. I think you're putting an extra emphasis on what do they do as a lord. To me, that is part of it, right? I think you couldn't say, and I think you're agreeing with this, I think at worst she's the second best hero in the game. At worst. Yeah. To me, it's either her or Elwyn. Those are the 2 best heroes in the game.
Phenomenal heroes.
And combine that with the fact that, I'll just say my Ingrid thing now. I feel like there's not that much you have to say about her to begin with. Combine that with the fact that I think she's a perfectly good lord for a very good faction now and a very up and coming, heavily focused faction. we're giving a lot of focus. We both did this to the second line. Very interesting. The middle line in this faction is significantly boosted compared to Ein, and certainly Borit. Well, Borit only gets the top line, right? But it's significant. Or no, he gets a very baby version of the middle line. But I mean, this periodic increase of 50% damage and healing. It's every 20 seconds, but with more units, it's faster. I think it gets down to like 12 seconds, I want to say. I haven't timed it out. I really should. But if I had Ingrid, I'd be running a full comp, right? I'd have a full line of Watcher. Oh, also with Alistair. So she's like, there's very meta comps where you could run like an Ingrid, a Kagiri, an Alistair, a Constance. She's not inhibited by not being the Lord. Combine that with the fact that she's the best hero, not counting the crazy Lord stuff Praise does, in the best faction in the game. I couldn't be higher on Ingrid, but we're splitting hairs here. Shall we get to my number 4? It shouldn't be too hard. We've already discussed it in pretty good detail. I think we can probably just move on. I've got Yovar here. I'll just say, I think a lot of people can infer what my top 3 are going to be. To me, that's very set in stone in my head. Yovar, I do in my mind very much have a tier of his own. So like if you're saying like I give 5 people triple S, there's like the top 3 locked in. Yovar, no brainer. Then we have like this group right here, maybe even throwing Gon, but really just Torador and Cyrus. That's where it's like the ultimate headache. But yeah, Yovar to me is just, if you're not going to get one of these 3, no one could blow up your account faster than a Yovar, I think. Helping you in every aspect of the game. And I guess I can just leave it there. And he's such a good hero and he's so cool.
I think the coolest thing is our top 6 are exactly the same.
Just in different order.
Terms of, yeah. And I think this is the point, is it is teeny tiny like changes and stuff.
For sure. And it comes down to how you approach the game, what you prioritize, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they're really good. Yeah, really this top 6. And then, I mean, to me, really the top 3 is about to go nuts. But is this Torador?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think the thing is that I think Nightmare is one of the strongest factions. Like, yeah, you're talking about arbiters, but given that they're ancient exclusive, they are much harder to get. I also think pretty much there isn't a piece of content I wouldn't run a Nightmare or couldn't run Nightmare in. And like you said, the difference between Wrath and Torador is massive for what he does. What he does to enable Nightmare comps is also insane. Like the stuns that he's got on, he is also a very good tank himself. Oh, he's not a very good tank. He's fantastic. He's got the extra life that he has with the revive thing that he does. His stuns that he puts out are disgusting. In GVG, Nightmare is super strong in lots of different things. In APOC, he can then be your tank and your stunner. And I think if we had another Nightmare Lord, maybe Torador wouldn't be this high on my list. But because Torador just makes Nightmare comps a whole new level, he has to be top 3 for me because of how strong Nightmare is.
I really agree. I'm really happy you touched on that. Like the fact that he has no counterpart and it's just him and Praetus that are alone as the only legendary lords. It speaks a lot. So no one else can compete because the difference between him and the other option is so huge. He's so much better than Wrath, especially with that defense break. I do agree with you. I think a lot of people say he's like a bad tank. I've probably even said in different ways that he's a bad tank in the past. I really think it just comes down to the requirement for him to be a good tank is very good gear, because you're going to have to run at least one defense bonus main piece because this is so low, and you're going to need him skilled up, essentially. Which to an endgame player, it's like, I'll skill up Torador. If I pulled Torador, he would be skilled in everything. I might even put stones into him because why not? Immediately, right? But I think just trying to maintain that global view of the entire progression in the game, he's going to disappoint. So he does disappoint so many people as a tank when you get something that looks like this and your Livian is much better. But I think this is the thing. He's one of those heroes that ages, so to speak, better and better and better.
And he is my most wanted hero in the game.
He's like my 3rd. But if I had your roster, he'd be my most wanted.
I've gotten very lucky recently. So.
Everyone told me to go watch your video. If you guys want to feel sad, go watch
insane.
Slate's infamous summoning video.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think not only does he age well as you get deeper, but as they continue to add stuff and they keep being like, what if the defense was high? It's like, well,
Yeah.
what if I had the defense shredding faction with the defense shredding lord? And he's really
And I
good.
think that's the point, is the debuff that he brings in boss content is massive. The stuns that he brings in PvP content is massive. And Nightmare's just so strong. Arrogance, Lust, Kagiri, Valeria,
Hatsu, Twyla. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, like it's just such a cracked faction that he had to be top 3.
And he's good everywhere, right? Like those GVG comps to this day are still a major headache. In PvP, he's the number 1 second meta for a ton of stuff, right? If you don't have, these other insane, really rare guys. And very worth mentioning, I had him at 5, you had him at 3, and he's the only normal lord that is even close to that high, right? You had Aracha as the next highest, I had Leia as the next highest.
And I think that's also why I have him so high, is because
accessibility.
He's not an ancient exclusive, and what he can do to your account and to your team, you are more likely to get him than you are one of these ancient exclusive lords. And I think that, like, yes, you pull a Valderon, amazing, right? But you still got to get other, well, maybe not Valderon because you can use him on his own, but point being that
it makes sense.
Brilliant, basically.
Yeah. Nice little transition. I will reveal mine. I think I know this has to be Cyrus and then Praetus, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you had Cyrus as the number 1, I would have lost my mind. And I have Ingrid and then Praetus. I think that's a nice transition, because I will say the big knock against Praetus, the only thing you could say against him is you need at least a little arbiter action around him, whereas some of these other heroes don't. Just to speak to Valderon, I said I'll get back to it. I'm going to try to be really brief. This is a long video slate. But to get back to Valderon, he literally doesn't need a single other chaotic. Nothing about his faction, about his lord skill needs faction members. He's not like a Soul Kittens or a Twin Fiend or a Praetus or even a Leia or an Ingrid, where it's like the more there are, or even a King Hearts and an Elder, where it's like we reduce the cycling of the shields if it's more units. It's just you put him there and he's like, oh, now he gets all this crazy stuff. That could be a demerit, because now it's like, okay, you've wasted an entire line of 5 on just one hero if you don't want to run any of your chaotics. Or, as you've already touched on in little pieces, throw in a Leia who doesn't need a lord, or throw in a Brokir who doesn't need a lord, or so on and so on. It's absurd. A Valderon and just a Carnelian could beat the game for you, And I think
that's why mine for it is lower, is because what the other lords do for their factions is massive.
So, but his lord skill does all for himself, and that's enough, because himself is enough. So, like, to me, it's really bottom line, like, what would you do for me today? And Valderon beat the game for you by himself, basically, right? So, like, you talk about progression, he's definitively to me the best hero in the game for progression. There's no one even close. It's like plug and play. Valderon carries you to the finish line. He's even better than Ingrid. It's probably those two neck and neck, I think. And then as you get a little deeper out of progression, then you throw like an element in there. And then as you really start looking at the end, you talk about the big boy who we're about to discuss. But with Valderon, he does all that progression stuff. I've heard so many people say, like, I pulled Valderon early and then I beat all the gear raids, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
He can like start soloing guild bosses for you, stuff like that. But even in the end game, he's the best unit for stage 6 of Epilogue, right? He's tremendous in PvP, broken in PvP. You just need any little spice around him. I don't see how he could ever be power crept in the next 24 months of this game. Who knows if the game will even make it if they keep up with some of the stuff that's been going on. I mean, to me, he's just phenomenal. You have Cyrus at number 2. You kind of spoke to it. Is there anything? I mean, I kind of extolled his virtues and just said it wasn't enough. What makes it enough for you, having him as this number 2?
First of all, his Lord skill has 2 very important parts. One, the ally, when any of them die or retreat, his faction members get 25% damage. And that is actually quite a very nice boost. And it's sort of like 8 seconds. Now, usually with these terraces and different things like that, you're going to probably be running a Laurel cycling. So every time you are picking up Laurel and then ulting with your DPS, which is going to be your Boreas, your Anora. By the way, like, Anora has become a real interesting one for Giri too. like she's really good.
They really
in
helped with her
PvE.
buff, reducing the cost and
Massive.
upping the ultra boost. She's much stronger now.
And so what I'm saying is with those kinds of things, and it doesn't even have to be, you know, it could be Volca going like that for the rest of what is in the esoteric is really nice, that little damage boost. And then also like this 25% skill cost reduction. Esoteric is just such a strong faction that I think, you know, this kind of Lord skill with how strong the faction is one of the reasons he's sort of very high. Then as a unit himself, he is disgusting. Like he is the definition of an immortal tank. If you get enough rage on this guy, he does not die. And we can see it in the like meta GVG teams where basically doesn't matter how strong you are going up, if you get him raging enough to get these skeletons going, he cannot die. Which, you know, it's like, okay, that's a bit unfair, but that makes him so strong because that makes him one of the best like heroes in the game as a defender. I think the other thing is that the comps that he enables because of that, again, as a defender. Also, he's not just a defender, he's very good at damage. When you're talking about Haas, they're trying to like make him a damage tank. You put Cyrus in full DPS and you have a totally different hero to what you had as a defender. Yeah,
like a fully skilled high rage regen Cyrus doesn't need that much tanky stats because he's just going to keep summoning these bad boys that keep soaking it all up. It's pretty legit. This Lord of the Undead's crazy. People can go see my GVG streams, which I've been trying to do more and more lately, and like not more than once I've been like, how is he not dead yet? It doesn't make sense.
He doesn't die.
I actually wonder if it's borderline bugged because like the skeletons aren't there and he's just not dying. But he's a crazy hero. I'm insanely high on him. Like we said, this top 6 is pretty special. Yeah. I think you're a little higher on the esotericist faction than I am.
Yeah. But then I think
maybe if I had a Cyrus, I'd feel differently, or if I had a Venoma, but as someone with just a Raiden, but like every other good esotericist, I still don't find myself using them.
I think that is definitely the difference, is that I now use esotericist in pretty much everything because of what Cyrus can do to Karmit, Boreas, and Aura. And Elowen.
It's hard to know how much that's speaking to as a positive or a negative. Maybe it is a positive. Maybe it's like, I mean, I have A5 Boreas, A4 Comet, Elowen. You can see all the guys highlighted, right? I'm not missing anyone except for Dasami and Dallin, who I don't envision I could fit into that much stuff. And I don't find a use a lot of the times for this stuff outside of very traditional options, right? But maybe it's saying, oh, is the faction not that needed on game, or is the faction not truly unlocked until you have a Cyrus? So
and that's why I put him at 2, because I think what he unlocks, it's a whole different world with esoteric teams when you have a Cyrus. And then he himself is a phenomenal unit. So yeah, for me, that's why he's number 2. He almost got number 1 for me because of how literally I don't think there is a piece of content in PvE I don't use him in.
You want to make him number 1? We'd get more clicks.
No, because I like I said, I did this on data, and
and he's not number 1. No way.
There's like 1 point difference between them, but Praetus does still take the cake, basically.
With Ingrid, I feel like I kind of waxed poetic a lot about her. Is there anything else we kind of have to say here? I mean, the gist of it is, I would say she's at worst probably the second, maybe third best hero in the game. She's a tremendous lord. She fits into 2 very relevant factions, including the greatest faction in the game. And you put her alongside Praetus. This is why I didn't put her at number 1. Maybe I'll explain that now. To be truly the best hero, which I think probably she is, when you have everything, it requires this guy. Combine the fact that this guy's probably the second or third or fourth or fifth best hero, all else equal, and the best lord and the best lord skill, and then he enables the best hero. I think we both did end up thinking this was a no-brainer, that Praetus is number 1, right?
Yeah. I literally, the only thing that I had is that Praetus versus Cyrus as individuals, I find Cyrus more versatile in terms of as a defender. As a single target mage, there's less use for Praetus, but Praetus as a lord enables more.
No, I was just gonna say the main thing with Praetus I think is underrated is people think they get disappointed because they don't think he's that good because they don't have a full Arbiter roster. From a lot of my testing, you need 2 Arbiter units. Well, here's hoping they rerun Alistair for Christmas again or something, so people have access to just 1, and then I think almost everyone will eventually pull 1 more. That's going to do it for a lot of stuff. Obviously, for max potential, you're going to want him with Ingrid and Jira and Constance and, get the whole crazy thing going. But it doesn't take much to get him going, and when he gets going, he truly is the #1 cheat code in the game. I would say his kit almost, I think, it doesn't even fit in this game. It's just so uniquely OP and doing things in a very weird, global, crazy way. I'll plug, I have a Praetus guide coming out in a couple days showing him as a progression unit, and he's pretty shockingly special. I don't really have much more to say. Properly using the Praetus button and using his Lord skill and understanding how this all works, he's Praetus, right?
I think the button thing is definitely something that isn't really easily understandable when you first read it. So obviously he gets his little lightning button, and every 15 seconds you get a dot on it, and it stacks up to 3, and depending on whether you hit the button when it's got 1 stack, 2 stacks, or 3 stacks, you effectively get different things.
And those correspond to these things that people don't know. Verdict of Truth 1, 2, or Final. Final is the strongest by a mile, but there is a cycling component in different content where you will just spam the 1 click as well, which it is very confusing. But
yeah, it is exactly that. 3 stacks is great, best effectively for maximizing damage from the lightning. But if you're running an Arbiter squad against boss, you are going to be spamming that level 1 so that you get the constant faction boost, because every time it's like X seconds after they gain 50% for 8 seconds. So pretty much 8 of those 15 seconds you can get 50% damage for your faction members. Now this is what's interesting. I got Praetus early, so I got him back in, I think,
Praetus early, Aracha early. She's got Valderon, guys.
I've had good Lord luck. I've had very good Lord luck. I will say that. And interestingly enough, I only just got my Constance. And weirdly, Constance is more of an enabler in Arbiter factions, as in to really make them work. I was like, I've got all these Arbiters and I cannot make an Arbiter squad work well because I don't have a Constance. Which I know is the most first world watcher problem to ask.
You said it.
100%. But I think the thing is that Arbiters are just an insane faction for what they can do in PvP. Also what they do in PvE with the boss fights. And like you said, Alistair and Valk are so good if you don't then have even the rest of them. What you can do with a Praetus, Valk, and Alistair in APOC 2 is really strong. It's yes, it shines even more with a Jira. Yes, it shines even more with an Ingrid, and a Plagios and Thalin and etc. But that's the amazing thing that what Praetus does is you unlock a whole new level of damage effectively when you get him. And it's the way I would say it is if you have just Praetus, it's going to be something, but it's not going to blow you away, but it still is something. If you throw even just a Valken, all of a sudden you're going to be impressed. Then if you just pick up an Alistair or a Constance, or maybe you finish your init quests, you're literally cooking. And then the second you have the whole thing and you're in APOC 2 and you're running Constance, Ingrid, Alistair, Praetus, and Jira, I mean, it's congratulations, So it's having a great
he's done the whole, takes you the whole way, right? At different moments, he might not be the best hero, but when it's all said and done, the way he grows with you in the game, it's there's a reason he's Praetus, and they just buffed his A1 to make it even more OP. I'm pretty happy with this list. I think we're so much more split than I thought. I guess one thing is, but even here, I was gonna say maybe everyone here fit in, but no, there's some pretty major departures, which is pretty nice, but we started the same, we ended the same, and we only lined up on Twin Fiend. That's pretty remarkable that we only had the same rankings 3 times.
Yeah, but this is the cool thing, and I think one of the things is that obviously for me, GVG is a focus on PvP, because I think honestly, when you're in endgame, it's pretty much the only content that really keeps you super engaged in the game. Obviously, they release new stuff and different things like that, but it is so exciting piece of like content, but it is a piece of content. So the nice thing about it is you don't have to participate to enjoy the game. But if you're end game, it's sort of where you're going to be focusing on. And I think that what was interesting was I really wanted to make sure that when I was doing this list, it wasn't who's the best GVG heroes. That's it. It's like how versatile are these? And yeah, I'm not surprised. Last and best, we agree on basically.
Yeah.
And I love the arguments because, funnily enough, I could agree with your list as well. Maybe not Cyrus. I have to keep Cyrus at 2.
Yeah. Maybe I'll have to give Triple S to 6 because I do really think this is a top 6. I just wanted to quickly show the viewers something. So like, if people understand why I'm frustrated by GVG, part of it is like personal and selfish, but also it is because of my personal selfish situation. I've seen what GVG is like for an endgame player that doesn't have all of these heroes. So there you go. And that's this. I'm missing all of these guys, right? So just a very real thing that this is the meta, right? Like it's very hard to survive in a game mode that is so hero capped. When I do find it fun, when the matchups are good and it all lines up, it's very engaging. It just sucks that only happens about once every 3 or 4 weeks, maybe. But it is what it is. It's great to have your expertise from a whole nother way. I really like your list too. Again, I want to encourage people, like, let us know your lists in the comments. Who is right? Who is wrong? What were the most egregious rankings? Obviously, this list is far better than whatever Mess Destined would put together, so you're welcome.
I was just going to say, did you want to see my thing?
Yeah, show it, throw it up. All right, if you didn't think Slate was thorough, now you know. But yeah, this is really fun. I definitely want to do more collabs like this with you and with other creators. I had to take the shot at Destin because of his infamous Valderon ratings, but of course he has a brilliant legendary tier list as well, so you guys should go check that out in other rankings. This is what we did. I love how calculated and quantitative this is. Thank you so much for joining me, Slate. Everybody go check out Slate's channel. Be sure to subscribe to her. One of the channels I consistently watch, which unfortunately I can't say about that many. So keep up it.
I've really enjoyed this. Like, nerding out on this game is like my happy place.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Guys, make sure to go to Slate's channel, subscribe, get in the comments, tell her to go eat dirt for pulling 25 Triple S Lords, and we'll see you real soon. Bye.
Fastidious.